This was taken from New Zealand rowers, and they actually monitored them through a season. And what they're doing is they actually look at, you've got your total training hours here, and then you've got your prevalence of injuries on this side. So you can see through the season, you know, roughly it's kind of matches what's happening with the training in the first part of the season, and that's what I was saying, if you train more, you might have more chance of injury. But what's really interesting is we have this period here where there's not much training at all. So normally you think, oh, that's good, they've got time to recover, you know, they'll come back and all their injuries will have healed and they'll feel wonderful. But no, as you can see here, there's a massive spike when they come back of injuries as that training volume increases. So what's actually happening, and this is why I put up that first slide about not doing enough, is during this period here, and so this is their off season. So during the off season, they've lost muscle strength, their body's not used to the same stresses, and then they've come back in and gone, oh, let's get back into rowing, we've got competitions coming up, and they all jump in their boats, start doing heaps of training, and their bodies aren't ready for it and they get injuries. So it's really about how you go through, and we're trying to avoid these spikes here in training load. So this was done in rugby, not rowing, but it just shows you what we're talking about. So here, they're looking at training load and versus the likelihood of injury. And what you'll see, where there's the steeper portions of the curve, if you actually change your training load just by a little bit, there's actually quite a big increase in the risk of injury. So what you're trying to do with your training is actually get them past this phase here, because once you get past here, you can see then you can actually have quite big changes in training load without much of an increase in risk of injury. So that's where you've got to be clever, is actually making sure you start slowly progressing and getting them past this kind of crisis stage almost, and then after that, they can actually cope quite easy with the loads. Don't worry too much. They're doing pre-season, early competition and late competition here, but like I said, that's more in rugby, so they tend to find closer to competition, there's more injuries there, and a lot of the time during competition phase, it's because of fatigue and their traumatic injuries, so it's different. And I think our rowing population actually tends to represent this line more. We don't have good data in rowing, we'll be quite honest about that, so we've had to take from other sports, but it does follow the same sort of principles with what we see in rowing, and hopefully with time we're going to have more data to be able to present to you exactly what's happening in a rowing population. So how do we know, what is the right amount of load? Well, what they've done is find there's what they call like a sweet spot. So this is a ratio where they look at, and I'll go into this in a bit more depth, they look at the chronic workload versus the acute workload, and the ratio between those can give you an indication if you're increasing the training too much. What we don't want to do is go up into these high bits, so this danger zone. So that's the ratio of about 1.5, whereas the sweet spot is about 0.8 to 1.3. And what we're trying to balance here is actually get the biggest net performance, to get the biggest performance gains that we can, but with the least kind of negative consequences. So that's things like overtraining, illness, injury, and fatigue.
At Decent Rowing, our goal is to get world-class rowing information into the hands of everyone. One of the easiest ways to do that is through our email list. We send out tips and tricks on rowing on a regular basis. If you want, you can sign up. As a sign-up bonus, you get 21 of our best rowing videos, including beginner and advanced rowing videos. We've also chucked in a couple of basic training programs and a training piece. So if you want to sign up, you can see what it's all about.